Federal child exploitation charges have been filed against a Jasper man accused of receiving child pornography. The DuBois County Contractual and Jasper Public Library Boards held their monthly meeting last night, and Inform featuring Bob Hughes and Dave Hall with the Disabled Veterans Wish Organization. All of that and much more is up next here on 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. In your news, a Jasper native who was arrested by local authorities back in July is now facing federal charges. In a press conference held this morning at the Jasper train depot, U.S. Attorney for the Southern Indiana District Joe Hogsett announced that 33-year-old Curtis Head of Jasper faces 12 federal counts of receiving child pornography, in addition to state charges that are currently pending through the DuBois County Prosecutor's Office. The federal charges were formally added by a federal grand jury after a meeting of that jury in Evansville last week. Under federal sentencing guidelines, Head faces 5 to 20 years in prison for each of the 12 counts. He could also face years of supervised release following his prison term, along with having a lifetime registration as a sex offender. Hogsett says as the investigation was going on, it became clear that Head was a danger to children all across the county.
It became apparent upon the execution of that search warrant that Mr. Head presented a public safety risk to the children of DuBois County, and that is not tolerated by the United States Attorney's Office. He was taken into custody and has remained so, and will remain hereafter until federal charges are ultimately disposed of.
Hogsett says cases such as this one underscore the importance of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies working together.
Well, there's no question that the way that we ultimately protect our most valuable and precious asset, our children, is best done by local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies working together to try to identify predators so that our children can remain free from this type of safety risk.
Head was originally identified as potentially receiving child pornography in a collaborative investigation with the Department of Homeland Security and the Jasper Police Department. Hogsett says detectives were able to connect to a computer on a server that was found to be sharing child pornography. That activity was traced to Head's Jasper apartment, where a federal search warrant was served back on July 31st. The investigation allegedly turned up a hard drive containing thousands of photos and videos of minors engaging in sexual activity. Hogsett says the investigation has so far discovered that Head seemed to have a primary interest in girls between the ages of 6 and 10. Head was taken into federal custody back on July 31st, where he currently is being held and will remain for the foreseeable future. In addition to the child pornography charges, the criminal complaint against Head alleges that he may have sexually abused a 6-year-old girl approximately 2 years ago. State charges are also pending in relation to this allegation. Hogsett says Head will be prosecuted on the allegations of possession of child pornography at the federal level. He says the DuBois County Prosecutor's Office can make its decision to continue prosecuting on the state charges pending the outcome of the federal charges. Hogsett says the investigation into this case is still ongoing. Recently released court documents filed for several of the defendants arrested in a meth bust in Daviess County earlier this week show just how large the drug network that they were involved in truly was. The documents show that the drug network largely transmitted methamphetamine from California to Daviess County. Probable cause affidavits were filed against the 15-person drug ring in state cases. 14 of those, including ringleader Alan Marshall of Washington, were arrested on Tuesday. The other person, David Merritt, remains at large according to the Daviess County Sheriff's Department. The investigation, which lasted for 18 months leading up to this week's arrests, picked up momentum in October of last year when members of the Drug Enforcement Administration's Evansville Task Force, along with the Daviess County Sheriff's Department and Indiana State Police, received information from sources who had agreed to cooperate with them. U.S. District Court Judge Richard Young authorized 3 wiretaps back in June of this year based off of information from this investigation. The wiretaps were used on both Alan Marshall and David Merritt's cell phones, along with a third unidentified cell phone. The charges on Adam Tolbert, Rhonda Lewis, and Jeffrey Fox were brought about following telephone conversations with Marshall and Merritt, according to the affidavits. Further, the documents reveal that Marshall, Merritt, Chris Kimmons of Coldwater, Mississippi, as well as James Coy and Marcus Newson, both of Washington, were alleged as the key individuals involved with the organization. Those five, in addition to Antoine Alston of Long Beach, California, have already been indicted in federal court for conspiracy to distribute more than 500 grams of methamphetamine. The majority of those who were arrested on Tuesday have been arrested previously on drug charges in Daviess County. No initial hearings have taken place yet for those facing state charges, but there were two sets of initial hearings that were set for today in Daviess Superior Court. Formal charges are still pending for the federal cases. Last night, the DuBois County Contractual Library Board heard an update from Board President Kathy Treader concerning the progress on repairs to be made to the patio wall at the Ferdinand Library. The stone on the front part of the patio wall has been pulling away from the rest of the wall due to structural defects. The estimated cost of repairs to the wall is between $12,000 and $15,000, according to Treader, with the construction companies paying the bulk of that cost. At the crux of the issue is what the Library Board will have to cover cost-wise. Seifert Construction, who had the project subcontracted to them by Universal Design, came back to the board with an estimate for $2,993 for their portion, which the board deemed a bit expensive. Ultimately, the board approved having Treader go back to Universal Design and Seifert Construction with a counterproposal under which the Contractual Library Board would pay $2,582 of the cost, and the rest would be covered by the construction companies. The board also asked Treader to include having the companies get started on fixing the wall as soon as possible as part of the counterproposal. Treader says getting the building fixed is important for the sake of children's programs held at the library.
Oh, this is a fairly new building. We would hate to have it. We want it to be safe. We have programs out here for children, or they can come out and read. It's a lovely place to be. It will be much better when they're done building the trails with the Trails project, but it's just a nice facility, and you just don't want to have something like that degrade.
Also last night, Treader updated the board on the progress for securing a grant for a feasibility study to be done for the Bird's Eye Library. The board passed a resolution at last night's meeting for a local match in funding, which means the contractual board will pay $3,500 to the town of Bird's Eye. The board is currently applying for a planning grant through Indiana 15 Regional Planning Commission, and though the Bird's Eye Library is the one seeking the grant, the town of Bird's Eye must apply for the grant on their behalf, as entities such as the library are not able to apply for these grants on their own under current policy. Treader says the planning grant would determine whether the current library at Bird's Eye, which is housed in the former town hall, would need to be expanded or whether a new building may be necessary. She says whatever comes out of the planning grant process is important for the future of the library in Bird's Eye.
Well, the importance of the solution is it gives us a direction. It's pretty hard just to guesstimate when you're planning something. We did a very similar thing for DuBois. We managed to build a lovely, lovely library at DuBois. We're already outgrowing it, and we are surprised about that. But it's been a real asset in the community, and people love it, and it's well used. So we want to see if the same opportunity can happen for Bird's Eye in some fashion.
A public hearing was held on the library's proposed 2014 budget at last night's meeting, but nobody from the public spoke at that meeting. The next step is adopting the budget for 2014, which is set to take place at the board's October meeting. Other notes from the meeting last night include an announcement that Treader will be serving as a board member for an upcoming library conference to be held in Indianapolis later next month, and an amendment in the minutes from last month's meeting to reflect the correct rates for the defined contribution health insurance plan. 40-hour-per-week employees of the library will have a $200 contribution level for their plan, and 32-hour-per-week employees will be at $160. The Jasper Public Library Board also met last night and talked about concerns that have been raised about having emergency doors unlocked during the day while crews begin work on the curb and front steps at the library. In final notes from that meeting, there will be a meeting on September 12th at 6:30 p.m. for the review of the library's long-range plan. Recently, Huntingburg Volunteer Fire Department fire investigator John C. Smith was appointed to the State Board of Firefighting Personnel Standards and Education. The 11-member board has the responsibility for establishing rules and regulations for the safety of Indiana's firefighters and other related rescue personnel. It certifies fire department personnel and instructors, directs research in the field of firefighting, and requires continuing education in order for firefighters to maintain their certification. Smith says it's an honor to be chosen and says he is looking forward to working with the state board.
I am humbled by the appointment. I hope to do a good job for and represent the volunteer fire service. In the past, there's only been one member of that board that was a volunteer firefighter. I have been told that with the new appointments, there are now 2 of us, and although I'm only 1 vote, I hope I carry the voices of many.
Smith, who was appointed by Governor Mike Pence, was recognized yesterday morning by the Huntingburg Board of Public Works. Smith is a 33-year veteran in fire service and has served on the Huntingburg Department for the last 20 years. He serves as the department's secretary and has also served as chairman of District 18 of the Indiana Volunteer Firefighters Association since 2007. There is no term limit to serving on the state board. And finally this evening, a new ride is coming to a Spencer County theme park for next year, and its progress is sailing right along. Holiday World and Splash and Safari has announced that a new classic swinging ship ride that will be known as the Mayflower will be coming to the park next year. Park spokeswoman Paula Werney says this idea has been in the works for quite some time.
Well, when we first started our Thanksgiving section in Holiday World, it was 2006, and one of the rides we talked about way back when was to do a swinging ship ride and call it Mayflower. It just made perfect sense, and we've had it on the back burner for all these years, and we bring it up every year, and this was the year we decided, yes, in 2014 we are going to add a wonderful family-friendly ride called Mayflower to Holiday World.
Werney says this new ride comes at a time where the park is continuing to look for ways to expand.
We're really excited to keep expanding year after year. We add something new. We've really concentrated on Splash and Safari for a number of years, and now we want to take the growth back into Holiday World. And with our first year, we're adding Mayflower, a wonderful family-friendly swinging ship ride, and we've got lots of other exciting things for 2014 and for the future.
Additional new items for next year will include Friday night fireworks on Friday evenings between June 13th and August 1st, extended hours for Splash and Safari, the Summer Fun Card program for multi-day summer visits, new restaurant and shops in Splash and Safari. Covered bridge entry to the Thanksgiving section will also be included. Additional cabanas, benches, shade structures, and parking improvements will also be a part of improvement plans for next year. The cost of all of those improvements is estimated at $8 million, but the good news for those that are visiting Holiday World, there will not be an increase in ticket prices for the park next year. Coming up after the break, your local forecast, sports with Kurt Guxell, and Inform featuring Bob Hughes and Dave Hall with the Disabled Vets Bush Organization. That's all up next here on 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.